If you've been struggling and trying to grow your business and you feel like your business is completely out of control, you feel like your sales are by luck, you feel like you get paid by luck, and there's no rhyme or reason to what's going on in your business, it's because you don't have a dashboard tracking these metrics. And by implementing a dashboard, like I'm going to go over that in this video, that shows you these different metrics, you're going to be able to retake control of your business and be able to feel comfortable running it. At least not stressed out to the point where you don't know where your money's coming from every single month. Now, this is going to be geared towards online service providers, people in high ticket sales, any type of really online business. Highly applicable. If you have a different business, I'm not going to say it's not applicable, but this is what this is focused on. Starting off here, we're going to start by tracking our finances. This is one of the most important things. It's really intimidating to a lot of people, but talk with your accountant, and you don't need something super complex to track this. But having something where you can even just tell what's going on financially in your business is a huge game changer. For example, even if you just change your bank, if you use, for example, Novo, this isn't sponsored by them at all, but they have some, really easy tools in there to see like what your cash flow scenario looks like. So just simply looking at the tools you can easily have access to have a pulse on what your business is makes a huge difference. I always recommend tracking your expenses by category here. And what does that mean? I want to know how much you're spending on payroll, how much you're spending on tools, how much you're spending on food or office space, stuff like that, and like the percentages of those. If you're spending like 50+% on softwares, you can probably consolidate those. Might be an exception if there's a SaaS company that you're running and you have a massive cloud storage bill or cloud compute bill. But for the most part, most businesses aren't going to spend that much on it. But it's really easy to start piling on the subscriptions, and before you know it, you have a ton of subscriptions that you don't even need. So tracking your expenses by category and just knowing what you're spending your money on. A lot of business owners don't know how much they spend on what as well, and that really affects the next thing is your gross margin. Revenue minus expenses. How much is that? What's your gross margin percentage? If you're, in high ticket sales, you can probably get around a 30 to 40% gross margin at scale in the beginning. If you're doing less than $1 million, because you're, and it depends on if you're including in these numbers what you're paying yourself, which you should be, but a lot of people don't. And if you're not, but even if you are, you should be paying yourself a reasonable salary and taking most of that out as a, dividend from the company, technically speaking. You probably want that to be above 50, closer to 60%, because you can run a clean ship. You can automate a lot of things with software. You don't need tons of VAs to do things. And we can talk about that in another video as well. But that's, just what you should shoot for. If you're doing less than 40% and you're like in the online space doing education, high ticket sales, you're an online service provider, you might want to reassess that. And then of course, your profit margin as well. You want to track that. You want to know how much it is. And then free cash flow, I mentioned this earlier, but just even having an app like Novo that's going to tell you, what was your money in, what was your money out, that makes a huge difference in having a pulse on how much cash your business has available and is ready to deploy. Okay. And a lot of people will say, oh, I did $100,000 in sales this month. Well, turns out they did $100,000 in sales revenue. All of those people are on payment plans. They only collected 15K, and then half of those people are going to dispute. So they really only did 50K, and it's going to be split up over the next 6 months. So knowing what your cash flow situation actually is and not lying to yourself and your brain. And I've seen tons of people do this where they convince themselves that their situation is better than there is. And it's this super tempting thing to do, especially when it comes to finances. And I urge you, don't do it, because that's how you get yourself messed up. All right. And like I always say, tracking all of this data, it doesn't fix your problems. It just tells you what they are, okay? If you have an issue in any one of these areas, you just got to figure out what you want to do to fix that problem, okay? Next thing on sales, if you've seen my other videos, pretty much the same stuff here. You want to track your call bookings. How many call bookings are you getting? Cool. And how many live calls, how many people are showing up to those calls, because those are going to give you one of your most important numbers, which is going to be your show rate here, okay? Your show rate's so vitally important. And also, didn't put this in here, but your time to engagement from your call booking to when they show up to the call is really also going to affect your show rate. And there's other metrics you can track in here that will explain why your show rate is the way that it is. If you don't know what your show rate is, you can't even dive in to figure out what those problems are, okay? Next thing is, how many offers are you making on your calls? If they're qualified, you should be making them an offer, okay? Or your salespeople should be, your closers. And that gives you your offer rate. And these are just important metrics because it allows you to know of how many offers you make, how many closes are you getting. Your close rate, you're going to want to calculate that based off of how many people show up to your calls. But your offer rate, and you can do an offer close rate as well of how many offers you put out there. How likely are you going to close? This can be highly incentivizing to your closers to know that when they pitch someone, they're going to close 25% of those people. Okay, just another metric to track, especially in comparison to, for example, if they're only closing 20% of everyone they pitch. And, knowing these numbers here, should really shoot for show rates above 60%. That's like on the bare minimum. You really want like 75 to 80% in an ideal world, okay? And most of the time, if your show rate's like less than that, I'd look at your time to engagement. That explains most of it. And if your show rate's below 50%, I'd look at like a software or service where you can, effectively double book. That way you can, have a sales call going on for your closers no matter what. Your offer rate, you should really be offering to, I'd say, probably 80% of the people you talk to. If you're offering to less, you need to look at what your content is doing to attract those people, because they're probably not qualified if you're not offering, or you have to have a specific conversation with your closers as to why and what is going on there. And your close rate, if you're doing high ticket closing and you're doing organic content marketing, you're going to want to shoot for 30% here, okay, on the minimum, just because they're highly activated, with the exception of if those leads are coming from like directly short form content, because short form content can almost act as an ad in a sense where it hits like a cold audience and they get activated and they come and they apply. Okay. But if it's long form static, and even if it's short form, a lot of people are going to watch a lot of content before they actually book a call with you. They're going to be really nurtured. Okay. They're going to be really hot. They're going to be really activated. And as long as you're getting to them quickly, you're not pushing them off and having a sales call with them like a week or 2 weeks out. You really have a really high conversion rate there. Okay. After sales, we're talking about lead gen. You want to know what your funnel views are. So, how many total impressions you get, how many total views you get, then profile views, and then, your link views, your website views as they go down the funnel. Okay. If you can minimize and condense your funnel, that typically, at least in my experience, and especially when you're scaling, from 100K to like 7 figures to about 5 mil plus a year, it really helps on that conversion rate. Because, every time you ask someone to click a button, you're only going to get 3%. Okay. Typically speaking, unless you have really good CTAs and really good copy, then you can push 10 to 15%, but you're going to take a massive haircut on that traffic that you have. Okay. And most businesses have an issue with lead flow, not an issue with quality of lead flow. Okay. Just keep that in mind when you're tracking all of this and setting up your dashboard to view this. Lead sources. People don't know where their leads come from. Are they coming from Instagram? Are they coming from TikTok? Is it organic? Is it paid? You need to track this. You need to follow this. Sometimes you need to do, surveys. If you're running organic cold outreach and content marketing, organic content marketing, you need to ask your customers how they found you and get their, honest opinion, because they might have come. The data might initially show that they came from an ad, but really it turns out they watched 2 or 3 of your long form contents, and then all your ad did was like activate them into booking the call. They were already sold on you prior. They just didn't sign up. Okay. And then like the number of leads that you got coming in, obviously important, and like from what lead sources, because this is going to tell you how well your content, how well your ads, how well your referral network, how well any of your marketing efforts are working. Okay. From lead gen, we go to operations. Onboarding, quick note here, most of your onboarding, it should be automated. You should have systems set up where, if they're getting into your Slack, they're getting into their Slack automatically, into their educational resources. You should have onboarding walking them through. Most agencies can do this as well. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have like a customized onboarding call, but like as far as like access to most of the systems and everything else, you should automate that from your CRM to having all of that stuff going out. Okay. And then here's a huge thing that so many people don't track, especially like in the high ticket sales space, or whether it's, agency or whatever it is your customer touch points. And if you're providing a service, those touch points are really what's going to build that relationship with your customer. And it's really going to affect some of these other metrics you're going to want to track. So like tracking your touch points and what those touch points are and what they look like, whether it's a Slack message, whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's them showing up to a group call, whatever it is, tracking those and figuring out how many touch points your customers get on a week is huge. Now, the next thing is customer progression and satisfaction. Okay. If you're providing a service, there's going to be certain mile markers that your clients are going to hit, and you should have these laid out. And the more wins you can get your client to get, the more dopamine hits you can get them to experience those high points, the more likely they are to want to work with you again in the future. Okay. It's just the reality of the situation here. I'm not trying to encourage anything unethical here. You're just trying to get them the results that they came to you looking for and make those results really good experiences. Okay. You should make sure they're going through those different stages, you're hitting them, and when they hit them, you need to let them know that they hit them and that is a big deal. Otherwise, they're not going to consider it as a big deal, even though it might be a big deal. Okay. And then the next thing is upsells and retentions. And this is like directly related to those last three things. If they had a good onboarding experience, if they had a lot of touch points in the program with their friends, if you're running a coaching business and they're friends with all of the coaches and they have a good relationship there because of all of those different touch points, you're more likely to be an upsell and you're more likely to retain them as a customer. And if they have that progression, it's a slam dunk. Okay. If someone comes into your program, let's say you're a marketing coach and you get them to double their lead gen in the space of 3 months, why wouldn't they like upsell into your next program that's 6 months long? Just simply because it's a no-brainer decision for them in growing their business. The only reason why they're not going to in those situations is because they fundamentally misalign. They don't want to grow their business any further because they're completely satisfied being a one-man shop, and they want to continue being a solopreneur. They don't want to continue to grow. They don't want to have to bring on the resources to do the sales, to do the marketing, to do the customer fulfillment. And you can have other conversations with them because sometimes people just use that as a disguise. They just don't believe that they actually can. But sometimes you'll have people like that where it just doesn't align to work further, and that's okay. But for most people, they want to continue to grow their businesses as part of like the thrill of being an entrepreneur. Okay. And that covers all of the like key metrics you need. You need to understand your finances, your sales, your lead gen, and your operations. There's other things you can track, of course, but these are like the key things that if you're not tracking these, if you don't have a pulse rate on like what's going on with these, you really have no idea how fast your car is going, if it's going to burn up, all of these different things. And as you scale beyond 7 figures and you start to build a team, you're going to want to add a whole nother dashboard in here for internal metrics that are going to track how well your team is doing, how well your salespeople feel, how your coaches, how your fulfillment looks like, how they feel about their jobs, their workflow, all of that. Because then you're also going to face this thing where you're bringing in people and you're training them up, you're training all this talent, and you want them to stay with you. You don't want them to leave. Okay. Now, no matter what, in any business, you're going to have some churn, and especially when you bring on new people. But once you get a good person in there, you're going to want them to stay. Okay. If you found any value at all from this video, please drop a follow or subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me. And I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Have a great day.